Good evening and welcome to the John Cady podcast. I'm John Cady, U.S. Navy retired former minister and a man who's seen and experienced a lot of things. In this episode, we're going to touch on memory lane yet again and talk about an album that deserves a revisit, not because it is a classic album, not because it was a touchstone of our pop culture, but because when you look back at the history of the group, it's a glorious train wreck to watch, and lots of people love to watch a train wreck as it happens. I am talking about the Village People album Renaissance. We're going to start off with the events leading to Renaissance. In 1979, Village People were on the top of the world. They had a wonderful success in the U.S. and around the world, starting in 1978 with Macho Man and then YMCA, which hit the top 5 here and was a number 1 hit in numerous other countries. Then came In the Navy, which put the Village People even more on the map. And life was good. Village People were very much in demand. But then came a series of events, some of which were beyond the group's control. And some, the producer played a big hand in Village People's downfall. One of the first events that happened in the summer of 1979 was the Disco Demolition Night in July of that year in Chicago's Comiskey Park. Led by none other than DJ Steve Dahl, thousands of people showed up at Comiskey Park with thousands upon thousands of disco records. They got blown up, frisbeed, smashed all over the place. The field was such a mess that the Chicago White Sox had to forfeit the second game of a doubleheader because the field was that badly damaged. The Disco Demolition Night symbolized a public outcry against being subject to disco non-stop. Village People were one of the first groups to feel the effects of it. Their follow-up single to In the Navy, the title track from their album Go West, failed to hit the top 40 and only peaked at number 45 on Billboard Hot 100. Village People then struggled later that year with the album Live and Sleazy. Live and Sleazy had 2 records. One record was the live version of songs performed by their first lead singer, Victor Willis. Willis left the group before Live and Sleazy was finished, so they called in a backup singer named Ray Simpson, and he took over. That wasn't as much of a problem, but the backlash on disco in general did slow things down. Live and Sleazy was not that big a success. Ready for the 80s, which was actually a decent, Village People single with all the usual harmonies that people came to know and love with the group. It didn't make the top 40 either. It peaked at number 52. Jacques Morali, the producer, was struggling to keep Village People relevant. In 1980, things began to get worse. Not because Village People had gotten into a scandal, but because creative decisions were made that just made them look embarrassingly bad. We're talking about the musical Can't Stop the Music. Can't Stop the Music was the movie that gave birth to the parody of the Oscars known as the Raspberry Awards, or the Razzies. In fact, in the inaugural Raspberry Awards, Can't Stop the Music won both Worst Picture and Worst Screenplay. There were a few decent songs in the movie, but the movie itself was a stinker. It was reviled by critics, and it was a box office flop. End result, Village People continued the downward spiral. course, add to this, Casablanca Records was on the wane. It was on its way out. Village people soon found themselves a new label home with RCA Records. This was when Jacques Morali again, in a push to get village people back in the spotlight, came up with Renaissance. Now, I'm going to be blunt here. Renaissance has a few decent tracks. 5 o'clock in the morning, excellent village people harmony, a bit more mature sound, which was what the village people probably needed at that point. Same thing with Jungle City. Jungle City was more up-tempo, and Ray Simpson shined as far as his vocals were concerned. The quirky track on side 2, Food Fight, would be the last time that Dave Hodo would sing lead on a Village People song at all. And this was where Village People experimented with new wave, and they sounded kind of like an imitation Devo or Devo Light. And once in a while, that song does get played on niche programs like the Dr. Demento Show. But let's face it, the rest of the album was largely filler. And it definitely sounded, as many critics would later say, like they had a few good songs in the can, but then they had to throw something together at the last second. And that's why it was sonically a mess. But what really ruined it, what made Renaissance the train wreck that it became, was Morali's decision to ditch the classic macho stereotype costumes that everybody knew and loved with the Village People, and had them all put on slick looking new wave style outfits against a pink and black backdrop. And I'm looking at the album cover right now, and yes, it's awful. Village People were practically unrecognizable. When it was released, of course, the critics would bash it, but then again, critics alone didn't really sink Village People, because no Village People album was ever known for being a masterpiece of pop culture. But it was still fun to listen to. But doing away with the classic outfits that identified Village People for the world, that was the cure. That was the final nail in Village People's musical coffin. When it was released, now, it did do fairly well outside the United States. In Australia, it reached number 12. In New Zealand, it hit the top 40 at number 34. But here in America, it tanked. It only got up to number 138 on the Billboard album charts. An all-time low for any Village People album. They released a couple more albums after that, but they never again were able to regain the fire and the popularity that they had before. And it was not because of a scandal, it wasn't because of substance abuse among members of the group, but it was simply pushing things too far creatively by their producer to the point that it backfired bad. The fan base was completely alienated. Village People were never the same after that. And that is why Renaissance is, in my opinion, a glorious train wreck to watch. Because it is. It is simply that glorious a train wreck. This is John Cady. Thank you for listening. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and I will catch you on the next one.